organizations based in Ghana and served as its first CEO for 9 years plus. As a matter of fact, the foundation has supported thousands of women's rights organizations in 42 African countries with millions of dollars in grants. She served as a UN Women Nigerian Senior Advisor from 2017 to 2018 and currently a visiting Senior Research Fellow at the African Leadership Center at King's College, London. She is the author of Speaking for Myself. As a matter of fact, she also is the author of The Loud Whispers, certainly with Where Is Your Rapper? And definitely she is our amiable self, the First Lady of Ekiti State, Our Excellency Bisi Fayemi. Please can we put a hands together for her?
Your Excellency, the First Lady of Nigeria, Dr. Aisha Buhari, the Honorable Minister for Women's Affairs, Dame Colin Taden, our host for today, Lady Erelu, my very dear big auntie and friend, all the members of WIMBIZ, the leadership of the Guardian, the panel of distinguished speakers for today, and all the distinguished friends who are online. Good afternoon to you all. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I bring you warm greetings from Ekiti State, the land of honor. And I would also like to thank the sisters who have accompanied me to this program from Ekiti State, Mrs. Margaret Fakboyo, the Special Advisor to the Governor on Development Partnerships, and Mrs. Bola Sholanke, Senior Special Assistant on the Sustainable Development Goals. This is just to show that in Ekiti State, we take the issue of women's voices very seriously. I'm really delighted to be here today at this summit, and I thank the Guardian newspapers and the members of the board of WIMBIZ for inviting me. This is the season of International Women's Day, International Women's Month. And I must begin with a confession. I am weary. I am tired. Every time I'm asked to come and speak at events like this, usually about the same thing, to sometimes the same faces, I feel tired. And I believe, if you allow me to be a bit immodest, I have earned the right to be tired. Because I was at the Beijing conference in 1995 as a young woman who had a lot of dreams and aspirations for where she wanted to be years down the line, and where she wanted her generation to be, where she wanted her country and continent to be. Over 25 years later, even though a lot of progress has been made, we are still here talking about many of the same issues. So yes, I am weary. But then I remember that over the next 24 hours, somewhere in Nigeria, a little girl is going to be violated by someone she trusts. A woman is going to be kidnapped by terrorists and criminals. A woman is going to bleed to death trying to give birth to a baby. Over the next 24 hours here in Nigeria, a family is going to make the choice to marry their 15-year-old daughter off so they can afford to pay for her brother's education. Over the next 24 hours, a baby girl somewhere is going to have her genitals cut off in the name of culture and tradition. And in the next 24 hours, somewhere in this country, a widow is going to have to answer questions about how her husband died because she would be the main suspect. And it goes on and on and on. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this is why we cannot afford to be tired of showing up. Every year, governments and citizens of the world gather to mark this month, which has been set aside to celebrate and acknowledge the contributions of women all around the world. It is a time for reflection on how far we have come in raising the status of women, fighting for an end to all forms of gender discrimination, and ensuring that women play full and equal roles at all levels in society. In spite of the many efforts at ensuring that women are empowered and that they have equality of opportunity, Nigerian women still live in dark poverty. They suffer many forms of discrimination. They are mostly excluded from key decision-making positions. They lack access to water, shelter, and adequate nutrition, and they struggle to access qualitative healthcare services. Nigeria continues to record unacceptably high levels of maternal and infant mortality rates, one of the highest in the world. Right now, there are approximately 15 million children out of school in Nigeria, and 60% of that number are girls. All these issues continue to hinder the progress of Nigerian women due to entrenched patriarchal power, violent conflict and displacement, endemic poverty, lack of political will, and the use of culture, tradition, and religion to render women voiceless and choiceless. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is certainly not all gloom and doom. We do have some good news. One of the issues that we are happy about, especially those of us from the African Women's Movement who worked on the Beijing conference, is that now more than ever, Nigerian women and girls have access to educational opportunities in mostly the southern part of the country. We used to have to make a case for girls to go to school. Now, in many parts of southern Nigeria, the enrollment of girls outnumbers that of boys. So that is something to be proud of. And in a lot of our tertiary institutions, girls are doing well in science, technology, engineering, and medicine. We can also celebrate the fact that we have legal, policy, and constitutional frameworks in place to ensure that women's human rights are guaranteed and protected. I'll speak more about this later. Another thing to be proud of is the notion of women as leaders has been popularized, and it is no longer strange to see women in senior positions in public life. And that is why we must thank the Guardian and WIMBIZ for acknowledging all the women in the public service in particular today for all their contributions. We can be proud of the fact that we have great role models who we celebrate and we are eternally thankful for. There are so many to mention, but we have recently our dear Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the new MD at the World Trade Organization. Although in typical Nigerian and African fashion, we always want to take a shower without getting wet. So we want to see the next Ngozi, we want to see the next Amina Mohammed, but we don't want to raise the status of women, we don't want to empower women. We also celebrate the fact that now more than ever, there is more willingness to address gender equality and women's rights issues as part of gender mainstream initiatives to aid developmental agendas. I'm sure maybe 10 to 15 years ago, the Guardian newspapers, even though it's being led by a formidable woman, would have had her voice drowned out, even though she owns the paper, if she had said, I want to organize a summit for women, because people do not consider women and girls important enough. So distinguished ladies and gentlemen, how do we sustain the few gains that we have made? This is going to be my focus in the brief time I have. How do we move forward to ensure that we have a world in which women feel that they have a sense of belonging and can continue to contribute meaningfully to national development. I'm going to run over 6 key strategies that we need to go away and think about. First of all, we need to advocate for political will. We already have a lot of promises made by our governments, by our political leaders. I'm sure the Honourable Minister of Women Affairs, Jane Pauline Tallen, had been able to address us. She would have told us about all the great things that are happening now that the government is trying to put in place to encourage gender equality and women's empowerment. But we have to continue to push for political will to ensure that these promises do not remain at the level of rhetoric. And there are a number of ways in which political will can be demonstrated. It can be demonstrated through clear statements, for example, of our leadership. Clear statements in literal terms or their body language. And what we mean by body language is when they make appointments, that are important to showcase the talents of women. And when they create opportunities to, in all the programs that they run for women to benefit from. Political will is also demonstrated through the deployment of financial, human, and technical resources. You cannot say something is important to you and you don't fund it, you don't put resources there. And political will is expressed through the establishment, if need be, the restructuring or reforming of institutions, and promoting institutional cultures that aid the involvement and empowerment of women. Number 2, we need to continue to push for legislative and policy frameworks to break barriers. As I mentioned earlier, we have a number of legal and policy frameworks at a national level and at state level. But they cannot afford to continue to remain on paper, 1. And then 2, there are some processes that are happening right now that we need to be aware of and that we need to engage with. For example, there is the constitutional reform process happening as we speak in the National Assembly. Those of us in the women's movement have been pushing for affirmative action and quotas to bridge the gender gap in leadership. Nigeria has less than 5% of women in the National Assembly. And we call ourselves the giant of Africa. And you have countries like Rwanda with 64% of women in their equivalent of the House of Assembly. This is not good enough. So if we can have a constitutional reform process that acknowledges this and can help level the playing field with affirmative action and quotas, that would be a big plus for Nigerian women. The second process that is underway is the electoral reform bill. Right now, the only way to political power is through engaging with political processes, political parties. And the odds are always stacked against women. This electoral reform bill would hopefully address issues such as campaign financing, such as electoral violence, such as ensuring party democracy, and all those structural and systemic issues that keep women locked out of political processes. And the third process that is underway is the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill. We need this Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill to enable us as Nigerian women have equal access to resources such as education, land, technology, and so on, and also for us to have access to political power and decision making. So distinguished ladies and gentlemen, particularly the sisters, please note these 3 processes: the constitutional reform process, the electoral reform bill, and the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill. And please get in touch with whoever you know at the National Assembly and let them know that Nigerian women are watching. The third point I want to make is that for those of us who find ourselves in leadership positions, either we were appointed into these positions, elected, or married into these positions, We have an obligation to ensure that we promote an agenda that raises the status of women, and this agenda should be something that we own as our legacy as women in leadership. The agenda could be a whole range of things, but there are some issues that are important to women all over the world, maybe with a different degree of emphasis, but there are some core issues that are absolutely important to women, and they include, for example, the right to peace and security, the right to economic empowerment and livelihoods, the right to freedom from all forms of sexual and gender-based violence, the right to participation in leadership and decision-making, the right to education and training opportunities, and the right to qualitative health and reproductive rights services. Your interest could be one or more of these issues I have read out. It's absolutely fine. But if you're a woman in leadership, please try and focus on one of these issues and drive an agenda around it that will be your legacy, that people will remember you by, so that we will know we have used our platforms in meaningful ways. We are not powerless. We have platforms, we have agency, and we have voice, no matter how limited it might be. So please let us use what we have. My fourth point is about being politically engaged. Not everyone can be a politician, that's absolutely fine. Not everyone can run for office, but we can all be politically engaged. Support political processes. If you know of a woman, or it could even be a young man or young woman who is interested in political engagement, support that person, mentor that person, provide funding for that person. There are many powerful women in this room. WIMBIZ has some of the most powerful women we know in the corporate and public sectors, for example. How can you deploy the clout that you have to change the political landscape of this country? So I'd like to challenge you to be politically engaged. My fifth point is around mentoring and intergenerational organizing. That is self-explanatory. We have to continue to replicate ourselves. We have to continue to provide opportunities for young people. And last but not least, let us bring out our wrapper for other women. Many of you are familiar with my metaphor about the wrapper. So I'll ask the question again, where is your wrapper? Those wrappers symbolize solidarity, sisterhood, compassion, support. Let us continue to bring out our wrappers to support other people, particularly other women. And the way it goes, the way God works is, the more wrappers you bring out for people, the more wrappers will come out for you at a time that you need them. And running through all these issues I have raised, it is absolutely important to have men as allies. Now I'm going to round off by reading a poem that I wrote in commemoration of International Women's Day 2 years ago, 2019. And it can be found in my latest book, Where is Your Wrapper? I have a book of essays that was published towards the end of last year. And the famous essay, Where is Your Wrapper, is in the book. This poem is in the book as well. And it is called We Are Still Here. And I would like to read this in commemoration of International Women's Day and to celebrate all the great women in this room and online who are here today. Please don't look for us. We are not lost. We have not all been stolen away. We are still here. Even when they came for so many of us and shoved us into the deep belly of the devil, there are still enough of us left. We are still here. Our mothers and fathers wail and gnash their teeth, hoping, praying, fasting, beseeching for our return. We are still here. We are still here in the eyes of little Temi, whose innocence was bloodied by the hands of her favorite uncle. We are here in the pain of the once vibrant Jenny, who has become a shadow of herself because some boys wanted to teach her a lesson. We exist in the fear of the widow Ijoma, who has been left with 4 mouths to feed, with no money, a temporary roof, and vultures circling her home. We can be found in the sheer agony of poor Simon, clinging to his wife Stella as she dies trying to bring their child into the world. We are still here. One day every year we are remembered. There are lots of speeches, rallies, and marches. We sing and dance and clap, and our big men and women come out to tell us a lot of nice things. Then we all go away till the next year comes. We are still here, waiting for the day when the pain will stop, when we will not have to see the desperate hunger in the eyes of our children. We never want to see the day when the thought will cross our minds to sell one child so we can feed 5. We are still here in the bodies, minds, and spirits of all the millions who come together one day every year. We will always be here. We will no longer be silent when they steal us away day and night. We will no longer speak in whispers. We know there are enough of us to make a difference with solidarity, perseverance, courage, and determination. We will make sure that everyone knows we are still here. My name is Bisi Fayemi, and I challenge all forms of discrimination against women. Thank you, and God bless.